Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the C-Suite Cyber Podcast. The C-Suite Cyber Podcast enables C-Suite executives to make security-informed decisions. What's going on, Mike?
You know, I would think out of the two of us, you would be better at the intro because of your acting skills, but I don't know, man. I'm starting to regret this decision.
Hey, there's a reason my handle is bad actor, okay?
Hey, that's okay, man. Yeah, doing pretty good, man. Having a good
Good.
time in the cybersecurity world. Well, we got some cool stuff we're talking about today. I guess you wanna sprinkle the topic before we get going. What are we talking about today? Then we'll talk about what's been new.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the Shai-Hulud worm that compromised NPM packages. And contrary to the movie Dune, I actually think this was interesting and did not put me to sleep.
Oof, which one? The new one?
Both, I just don't like. No, I didn't even watch the new one because I saw the first one and I fell asleep. And I was like, this is boring.
I hear the books are good. I've never read them, but I hear they're good. I
Well, I
think
don't
I
know how
have
to
them on my
read.
Kindle. We know. No, I'm kidding. So we don't know if that's how you pronounce this thing, but put a comment below if he's pronouncing it like crap. I'm not going to try to pronounce it again, but let us know in the comments. Yeah, let's go ahead and get our ad in, and then we can dive right into stuff. So this episode, like all of our episodes, are brought to you by Tandem Cyber Solutions, your go-to cybersecurity, well, not just cybersecurity company, your go-to penetration testing company, where they treat you like a really good customer. They treat you like family. They're not just there for a week out of the year to do your pen tests. They are there all year round as you need them. Say, hey, you're my offensive experts. What's going on? Is this something we need to be concerned about? How should we adapt to the ever changing threat landscape that's out there today? Tandem is your go-to partner for that. So if you want to check them out, it's tandemcybersolutions.com/C-Suite-Cyber, which will be in the show notes. So feel free to reach out, say, hey, Mike and AJ said you can help me out. And of course they will. I guess a couple of other things I'll plug. So they are now doing tabletop exercises, which is a really cool, like in between your annual pen test or your quarterly pen tests are a good thing to add into your workflows to make sure your policies and processes are working as expected without having that big overhead and expense of a real pen test or even a red team if you're mature enough for that. So that's something to think about as well. So with that is the ad for the day. Tandem Cyber Solutions for pen testing. Yeah, what's new? What have you been doing? Yeah, great hat. I like it.
Thank you. I need a shirt.
Oof, yeah, I'll get those out.
Yeah. No, just a lot of events lately, hanging out with friends and stuff. Haven't really been doing too much on the cybersecurity front outside of work. What about yourself?
Oh, learning new stuff, getting ready for conference. Me and this goober here, we have a presentation in Charleston coming up. Is it the 1st or 2nd of November? Do you remember?
Yes.
One of those dates. The Simply CyberCon, Gary, who's been doing some great stuff out there, like GRC specifically, but he's spreading like a gremlin watered after like midnight or whatever the thing is. Like I think he's got like 4 or 5 podcasts now. He's grown. Anyways, he's got great content. He was gracious enough to let us talk about purple teaming. So that's something cool to look forward to. I'm looking forward to it. Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah.
He's not looking
It'll
forward to it.
no, it'll be a good time. I am fine when there's a camera. It's public speaking that like I still get butterflies and stuff, and so that'll be interesting to overcome. I'm sure like everything else, once you start, it'll be fine. So that's the only thing. It's been a while since I've been on a stage in front of people.
And the crowds were pretty big. So they had 2 stages last year, and they had probably 50, 60, 70 people at each stage watching. So, I mean, it's pretty good side. pretty good size. Hopefully, we get Joe as our moderator. That's my boy over at TCM. He helps
Oh,
out
cool.
with Gary's stuff. Yeah. So I think so. But anyways, I'll introduce you because I'd say his name all the time. I was like, oh, you got to meet Joe. So I'll introduce you.
Awesome.
What else has been going? Yeah, been dropping content on my YouTube channel. So I have a YouTube channel, if you don't know. But it's more geared towards like just cyber stuff, around cyber stuff, but entry level as well. I think last podcast I did, I talked with a financial advisor. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely check out the Mike Small podcast, put it in the show notes too. I don't think we put it in there yet, but just talking about stuff that's interesting, I think is interesting to people, retirement and kind of trying to figure out how to do that earlier than 62, 70, whatever. Is always a good idea and better done sooner than later.
Yeah. I got
So,
places to see, man. Can't be doing that if I'm
yeah.
using a walker and all that other stuff.
What's up next for you with travel? Because you're the big travel guy.
Yeah. So we have 3 international trips next year.
3? Jeez, dude.
Yeah. Aruba, Dublin, and Patagonia. So I'm actually gonna have to train for Patagonia. Uh, I always hike in like tennis shoes. I don't have real trail shoes or anything, so I'm gonna have to get some of those and train. So it'll be a good time.
So just for some awareness here, this guy, walks at like fast walks to his truck and he's out of breath. So like
Okay.
so that's what he means by training in Patagonia. If you don't know, is like it's actually on my list, but it's really gorgeous outdoor hiking. There's a lot of rock climbing that's out there as well. I also think they have some pretty tall mountains that people actually like summit, like mountaineering style. But super gorgeous area. So I can't wait to see these videos that AJ is going to be in. It's going
Yeah,
to be
I'll
amazing.
I'll
He's
be
going to be
sure to
like doubled
send you
over,
one.
passed out. Your girlfriend's like, let's go. His girlfriend does like Ironmans and like these like crazy endurance races as well. So she's going to be
Yeah,
so pissed at him because he's out of breath.
it'll be a good time.
Yeah, it'll be a good time. All right. So enough about us. Let's talk about this NPM stuff. I'll let you start out because this is AJ's topic. I said, "What do you want to do today?" He said, "Let's do some NPM stuff," which it really is a really good topic. I did some research a few months back about this, but yeah, tell us, why do we care?
Yeah, so this was an attack that recently occurred, I believe, this month?
Mm,
I don't know if it was just reported this month or if it actually like occurred this month. But anyways, npm, in case you're unfamiliar, stands for Node Package Manager. So it is uh, a place basically where you can collect different packages for your product, whatever it might be, and it's open source. And so there's a lot of different packages, which is important to this attack, and is used by a ton of developers, including security companies, including large financial institutions. You name it, they probably have used it themselves, or they have a product that is using one or multiple of the packages that lie on npm. So it's
okay,
very
so
important.
let's take a pause real quick. So you mentioned another one, open source. So some people may not be familiar with it, especially if they're not like a dev shop. What does that mean to, so they're not a dev shop. What does open source mean to all these other companies out there?
Yeah, so there's a difference between free and open source, right? So open source is free and you can see the code. Freeware is just, it's free, you don't have to pay for it. It's under a license, like an MIT license or whatever it might be. But you can actually see the code that is contained in there. So uh, that's probably the biggest difference. And then along with that, you have benefits and you have some cons, right? I would say one of the benefits is kind of what happened here, where the industry detected this attack. And so people had, they pull updates and whatever it might be for their packages, and they review those, and someone found that they had been backdoored. And so this kind of unraveled through that mechanism, opposed to like a commercial off the shelf. I think that's a military term, COTS. So that's like you're going to go and you're going to buy a product from a vendor and enter into a contract with them. So that's kind of the differences there. Is there anything that I missed?
Yeah. I think one of the key differences that I consider, especially in the security world, is that with this open source, you don't know necessarily who's adding code. Yes, there's some sort of review to it, but it's not going to be as established or as formal as a company whose business it is to develop the software. So the COT stuff you're talking about. So you don't really know who. And so what I've seen historically, and you've probably read about this as well, AJ, is that you'll have people that are committing code. Like, so this is people whose day job is not this. They're working somewhere else, Fortune 500 company, or even, or maybe just fresh out of school, but they're volunteering their time. So it's volunteers, and they're helping fix and maintain the code, right? No one's getting paid for this work. And they'll take years of committing to it to build up a reputation, and then they slide in something malicious over time. And that's what we were seeing. I think it was earlier this year, we had some NPM style attacks that were from that, where they built up a reputation over a long period of time and then slipped in bad code. And then all these other packages, all these tools that utilize this code in NPM are now backdoored. And so I guess we should talk about how that ecosystem works. So do you want to do it, or you want me to do it? Or yeah, that.
Go for it.
That's a good time today on C-Suite Cyber. Yeah, so basically with coding, if you're not aware, so I know this because I've done a ton of coding the last few years. Um, Whenever you're writing code, what you don't want to do is reinvent the wheel all the time, right? And so how we prevent that from occurring in the dev world is we borrow other people's code. So hence like NPM packages, hint, uh, libraries that you introduce into your code, you're importing. And libraries in general have the same flaw where you're relying on open source code out there, someone else has put together, but you pull it into your code so that you do not have to develop it. But then you're accepting the risk that you're not responsible for any of this code. You're just saying, I'm going to use it, whatever it is, and just follow the guidelines for utilizing this code in my code. So that's the risk, and that's how it works. It's they're borrowing someone else's code without necessarily reviewing it, because it could be thousands or hundreds of thousands of lines of code. So they're just saying, it does what I want. I don't have to write it. I'm going to use it. That was the problem with a lot of the SSL packages out there a while back, with some of the attacks that were related to that.
Yeah, and it's important to note too that this isn't specific to Node or npm. It's happened with VS Code. You can have malicious plugins, very similar kind of thing. Um, think of like a plugin on your Chrome, right? An extension. It's the same concept, right? There's a package code that you are adding to your tool, whether it be a browser, an IDE, which is like a code editor. I don't know what the acronym actually stands for. And it has this malicious code in there. Like Mike
What do you
said,
think it stands for?
uh,
IDE. Don't look it up. Don't do it.
something
Don't type
editor. I know the E is
it.
editor. In I don't know. Integrated something.
You should ask ChatGPT, see if he can figure it out.
You're looking it up.
I am looking it up. I had happy hour before this episode. Leave me
Integrated
alone.
development environment. Okay, so I had integrated.
Yeah, good job. Okay, sorry to interrupt, but figure that would be a fun little segue, full of segues today.
Yeah, so this could happen anywhere, right? And along with that, like I said, there's large organizations that use open source code. There's probably a handful of specific packages that are open source that nobody else has like taken over to maintain, that a lot of organizations rely on.
It's not
I
just a
wouldn't be.
handful, it's a ton.
Is it?
Yeah, it's insane, the ecosystem that exists out there. Like, that was a huge thing. I forget which big blow up it was, but there's a huge vulnerability at one point, and then it just became apparent that like this whole world of dev was built on a stack of cards. Because it's like, this is all open source. No one's paying to maintain it. This is just people doing it in their free time. and we're integrating this into COTS products, like real stuff people are paying for.
Was Log4j one or yeah, Log4j?
Log4j was a tough one. I don't remember if that was an open source thing, but it was a
It
library
is open source.
utilized. It is okay. So that would be an
Yeah.
example. So Log4j was a huge blow up. What year? How many years ago? Probably 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Where well, it surfaced in odd ways. So it didn't surface the same, and it was just because so it was a package people implemented into their program. It's not Fortnite. What's the one where Minecraft? I think is where people found it first, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Wasn't that the Minecraft? Yeah. So they found it and it allowed them to exploit it, but it was an open source package. And then it started populating in all these other programs that utilize the same library. Um, so if it's open source and it's used widely and someone finds an exploit, that's trouble. I mean, the splash radius is massive. It's insane.
Yeah. And that kind of just, I mean, we know that the old thought process of I'm too small to hack, it's no longer like a valid statement. And this goes to show like you may not be targeted, you may just be a- an opportunity because you use software that is inherently trusted by other people, right? So this is something to be aware of too. If you're not actually developing your own code, maybe you have an engineer and they're on contract or something, and so they know that this works. They're going to use this package or whatever it might be and introduce a vulnerability into your organization that way. So it could be completely unknown to you or the individual that's actually opening the door to this vulnerability, to this attack, and you could still fall victim to it.
Yeah, I think this like really falls into that bucket of you're using other people's stuff that you have no idea how it works, even though the code's there, you're not
Yeah.
reviewing it. And it's the same with WordPress plugins. WordPress gets a bad rap because it's super popular. There's a lot of plugins, but no one really checks these plugins. And like so many WordPress sites are getting popped because like they just kind of spin a wheel and say, okay, this plugin's super popular, let's find a vulnerability in it, and now we're going to scan all the sites across the internet and look for everyone that uses this plugin, and we're going to hop in there. But I mean, that's just a problem with the way the ecosystem's designed in general. Just dev, we're borrowing other people's stuff, we're not having to develop it. It saves us time, but we still have to accept that risk and figure out how to mitigate that risk at the same time as executives for cybersecurity in our companies. So speaking of, yeah, what like how do people how do people avoid um, becoming victims to stuff like this? Or actually, no, we'll save that for the end. Let's talk about the specific example that you have more in depth.
Yeah. So basically, what this attack was is there was a phishing campaign against some developers slash maintainers of these packages that are open source, and several of them were phished, and then they used their credentials to initially install the malicious code or a backdoor into those packages, and it acted as a worm, which is where the Shai-Hulud name comes from. It's the big worm with like the big mouth and rotating teeth or whatever from Doom.
Ah, I didn't know that.
Yep. But essentially, a worm means that it propagates by itself, right? So there's no manual movement or anything like that. Once it's in a network, it's able to move. Or in this case, once it's in your package, it would look for your tokens. If it found tokens, it uses a tool called TruffleHog to identify those tokens, and then it would essentially base64 encode those twice and upload that into a public repo so that anyone could see it. And then it would have a file called data.json, and that would contain the base64 encoded string of those tokens. And so, in theory, the person or persons who facilitated this attack would have had something crawling GitHub to look for these public repos. And in case you're unfamiliar with GitHub, it's a resource to like host code and snippets of code and such. It's used by pretty much every developer. I don't know that there's an alternative really. Um,
There
and they've
are,
had
but yeah.
what?
So there are, but yeah, I mean, it's the most popular one by far.
Yeah. And they've had their own vulnerabilities and stuff, but this was essentially a very high profile attack against known credentials, right? Like once they got into a developer and they put that backdoor into that package, anyone who installed that package would have their credentials, not like your system credentials, but your tokens dumped and then uploaded to the public repo to be assumably downloaded by the attacker and reused elsewhere.
Yeah. So let's see. I'll put something on the screen. Does this GitHub link have that breakdown, or is it this? I'm looking at a Wiz write up, which is pretty good, by the way. Good job, Wiz. Do you have a good one? I'll put it on the screen. And what I want to do is break this down for executives because you're saying a lot of stuff, this base
Yep.
64 encoding, blah, blah, blah. They're like, oh, I'm going to sleep. I'm going to go get some coffee or something, right? But what I want to make sure we do this episode is make sure they leave knowing, okay, I actually understand how this is impacting my organization. And I have good steps that I can take to fix this. So we'll get something up um, in a second. I think he's clicking away. I hear it, so he might be pulling something up. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
so don't worry about some of that fancy encoding and decoding stuff. You're probably familiar with what that is in general. Um, but we'll walk through step by step for you so that you actually understand what it would look like. Because for a lot of organization, a lot of for a lot of attacks, it's just really important to understand how exactly it's performed. And historically, a lot of them are performed pretty much the same way. The same concepts, the same, maybe not the same exact techniques, but conceptually the same techniques, if you know what I mean. Um, so if you can defend against one, you're constantly maturing, you're going to be okay. Um, yeah. So this website has something. Let's see.
I sent
Let's
you a
see.
link. Um, yeah, I think the thing that's unique about this is the creativity,
Okay.
right? The fact that it like dumps your tokens and then um, keeps moving, right? The worm aspect of it, and then making it public, which is another thing. Because traditionally, you don't want to be loud because then you're going to get caught. So you would have something that is more covert and avoids, being public so that other people can find it and see the same thing that you're posting.
Yep, that's true. Well, there's a couple of thoughts behind that, right? Some people are very noisy because it's like a trade-off, right? We're trading noise for speed, where others choose to slow it down, be sneakier so that they can stay around longer and kind of sink their teeth in deeper before someone knows. So by the time someone reacts, they have so many backdoors in this organization, you're never getting them out because that's traditional, right? We're looking at 6 months to a year is the dwell time between detection and when they actually got in. So that's a large time. I'm about to share my screen if I can
Yeah, so it
find
makes
it.
me
Here we go.
wonder if this individual is, doing this for the accolade of being able to say that they did this.
Yeah, maybe. So what I have here is the CISA.gov. So pretty authoritative. So that's why I pulled it up. No vendor, just the government talking about some stuff. Um, so let's walk through each of these pieces. So this is actually I would say it's a pretty complex attack chain in general. It's pretty lengthy compared to I guess ransomware does some complicated stuff, but this is clever in my book. Good job, clever.
Yeah.
Okay, so first, exfiltrated harvested credentials to an endpoint controlled by the attacker. What does that mean? Harvested credentials, exfiltrated harvested credentials. What does that mean?
Basically, they ship them out of the environment. And I didn't know that hadn't read this part. So I thought it was only to the public GitHub repo.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's why we look at different ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, harvested credentials. So it's important to keep in mind credentials don't just have to be username and passwords. Yeah, that's what it is most of the time, but it could be any type of secret. So we're talking about API keys. This is what your developer is going to utilize to integrate with different platforms like GitHub or wherever you're storing your data. You probably have an API or any type of SaaS solution you're using. If you're connecting to it, it's probably an API key. So any type of secret is what we're looking at. And so if you have someone developing, they probably have a lot of those stored on their system, and that's what they're taking. So not just the login credentials to GitHub and wherever, but they could be taking those API keys as well, and any other secrets really.
Yeah. And one thing to call out too is this isn't only going to impact, oh, my secrets are exposed, so I have to rotate those. If you have something that is open to usage costs and your key gets leaked, for example, we'll take an
Good
API
point.
key. Someone can script to use your API key, and then you're sat there with the cost because you should have, according to AWS or OpenAI or whoever company you have the key with, according to them, you should have protected your key. So it's happened before. It's not uncommon where your key can be leaked, and then you're sat with like a 10 to 100x bill compared to what you're expecting.
Yeah, it's not like the bank when there's a fraud. They're going to give you the money back and handle it. With this, AWS, Azure, whoever, Google Cloud, I guess those are your three big providers are going to be like, sorry, bud. Because that's a technique actually is the attacker will look through all of your public repositories. So any type of code that's on the internet that's in GitHub, that's how they categorize stuff. We put code up for my program, it's in a repo. So they'll go through these repos looking for secrets that you accidentally left in there. Hard coded is the word, like we wrote them in there. And then we uploaded it to the internet. Now anyone can see them. And that's kind of one of the problems they're highlighting here is that they're looking for secrets. But that's what AJ is talking about. If you put it up there publicly, now I can go in AWS, spin up millions of dollars worth of stuff, and you get the bill. I don't have to pay the bill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Fun stuff. Okay. So I think you kind of hinted at this. We talked about this uploaded credentials to a public repository via GitHub. So GitHub, we already talked about. So they're creating a public repo up there. Is there anything else you want to add to that one?
I'm just looking through the rest. I don't see it called out here. The article that I read, they used to get action to do the publishing,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
which is something that I haven't really seen before. It's basically a way to automate an action to be performed within GitHub. Um, so this truly was, once they started infecting the packages after the initial fish, this truly was hands off, besides maybe retrieving some uh, harvested credentials from time to time.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think this other resource actually has it that I was looking at. But yeah, that's a good point. A lot of people, I don't know if it's fairly new, but I've heard of a lot more people using it where just kind of like you've probably heard the term DevOps. That's where it's utilized in GitHub DevOps. So automating some of that. I'm pushing it to QA, it's going through a bunch of tests, it's ready. Then I'm promoting it to production. Part of that can be all of that's considered your DevOps pipeline. And then you can have these automated things that can assist with that entire workflow so that your devs are moving from historically it used to be I'm publishing or putting updates out once a month or something crazy like that. Now, with a lot of these new applications, new SaaS products, they're pushing updates maybe like 10 a day because they're doing smaller ones. They have these pipelines built out. It's a lot easier for them to push out updates, fix bugs, fix friction points in their stuff, all of that. I'm using my hands instead of coming over here and finding what you're talking about. Um, yeah, did you want to add anything else about those automations?
I haven't used them myself, but kind of what Mike mentioned as far as it being part of the pipeline and being integrated. If if you've heard of like a CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline, then that's part of what this would be, right? So you may have Git actions as part of your legitimate business process. They just abuse that functionality to facilitate the publishing of this to a public repo.
Yeah. So this is what you're talking about here, I think. So Worm
Hmm.
deploys a workflow script to temp process.sh. Don't worry about all that. Executing it to trigger automated branch creation. So branches is how you organize your code. It goes into a branch as part of that DevOps pipeline. Once it's approved, then it gets usually have a main branch, and then you have these other branches that your non-production code, so your non-customers aren't using it code. This is you testing and making sure it works before people start to use it. Those are going to be in your branches, and then they get merged later once they're tested. So that's what they're talking about, these other branches. And then it triggers workflows to actually take the secrets out. Um, See, forces private repositories to be cloned. I mean, that's a fun, like, this is pretty creative to me. So it takes a private repo. So a lot of times companies, they have their own GitHub. For their organization, and everything's private. So the world cannot see any of the stuff they're creating, which is smart, right? You have a lot of IT or IP, intellectual property. You don't want it to get out there. That's your competitive advantage. These folks are attacking these companies with code, and they're taking it, and cloning means they're making a copy of it and saying, this private repo, I'm making a copy and making it public. So it's like saying, KFC, I took your chicken recipe and now I put it in the newspaper. Well, newspapers aren't really a real thing either, but you know what I mean. Like, people are going to read about it, and now it's not IP. People can do do exactly what you're doing. Exactly what you're doing. They can make the recipe. So
Yeah, one thing that's interesting here is I saw the migration suffix, and the ones that I had clicked on were empty. The owners of those repos had deleted the files, um, and I thought that maybe they were trying to update, like, hey, they saw their stuff had been exfilled and they were trying to remove it. So one thing to discuss about GitHub as well is you can delete the file, but it still can be accessed if you look at the history.
Mhm.
And then there's even some more stuff. I think you can like look at the commits and pull requests in order to see some stuff there too. So it's not just like, oh, okay, I deleted the file, I'm good. Someone who knows how GitHub works, which I really do not know, to great lengths. I'm trying. They could still find the data, right? It's similar to like, oh, I deleted this file off of my desktop, so it's gone, but it exists in your recycle bin. And then if you're Mike or some nerd in forensics, you can even recover like from different caches and stuff there. So it's not just a simple fix. So I'm surprised that that was actually it. It reads like the slash migration was nomenclature for moving something that was private into public, and the ones without that were already public.
yeah. I do want to take a step back and talk about why GitHub is designed that way, because I
Yeah.
think that's important. Because I think immediate knee jerk reaction is, well, I just won't do that. I won't keep this. So part of the DevOps. So this is, if you don't know, if you're new to the world, DevOps is that buzzword that says, hey, we're going to formalize our development process and we're going to build in all these things so our code is more stable and we're going to have faster turnaround times on improvement. And there's just better quality. Now, the reason why they're still there historically, so it's like, think about it. If you're a business owner, like a small business owner, you're keeping your receipts so that when it comes tax time, you can go back and check them and figure out why you spent money at this restaurant or whatever. Um, this is version control in code. So if you push a new update, right? You did all the tests in your DevOps pipeline. It seemed like it worked, but when it went widespread, so we won't talk about in a specific EDR company. I'm sure they have a DevOps pipeline. They push this code out all across the board. Now things are crashing. We want the ability to be able to roll back those changes to go back to a known good working version of our program, uh, so we don't lose our work. Like, what would happen if you made this update and then you threw all your old code away? You're screwed. If something breaks, you don't know what to go back to. So that's why this is called version control. And if you're doing your policies correctly and a lot of your documents for your cybersecurity program correctly, you're going to have version control in place. Who made these changes? When were they made? Same thing, just code. Yeah. AJ loves writing documents, by the way. It's his favorite. No, my dad is funny.
Yeah.
I make him do all the like SOPs and documenting stuff. Thanks, Dad. Shout out.
Yeah.
Shout out to my dad, Papa
We,
Small.
we love Keith.
Yeah, he's great. He lets me do all the fun stuff most of the time. Sometimes I do the boring stuff, but he does the most boring stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, CEO at Tandem Cyber Solutions. My dad. Great guy. Great guy if you don't know him. Call him up. Ask him about his life as a police officer.
Or watch our podcast.
Or watch our podcast where we we interviewed him. He was like guest 3 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, we need to have him on. Maybe when he's here in person again, we'll be like, all right, let's have a chat. What you been doing, man?
Yeah. How funny would it be if I had him in my room because he's by me before he's by you?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I think he's leaving Tennessee soon. He might be back though.
Man.
I need to come see you. I've been busy. Since I was gonna sign. He was like, no, I'm just getting settled into my house. I can't have guests, bro. And then I was like, okay. And then I had a bunch of other stuff coming, like other trips, and I hadn't had time yet. We'll have to do one here in person. So AJ's coming to visit me soon. So, because we're presenting together, that's why. So maybe we'll do a podcast together. Maybe we'll get some of these folks that are coming over to hop on and share some tips.
Yeah. There's a really cool podcast studio. There's a couple podcast studios here, but let's get back to what we're discussing tonight.
I digress.
Pull up that page you had from Wiz, if you don't mind.
Yep, I have it. I was about to exit it, so you caught me just in time, buddy. This is it. All right. Where do you want to go?
Okay, so I think I was mistaken as if you look, so they compromise them. They have the script. The script is executed. It creates the branch, and then if it's private, it looks like it uses the migration suffix to make it public. And you can see this in logs. So if we go down to what was the impact, this is where this kind of solidifies to me that this was more of a proof of concept attack. They used a free version of webhook.site. And if you're unfamiliar with webhook.site, a webhook is basically a way to have a listener and you can run some code that may call back to, for instance, a C2 domain, a command and control domain. And instead of actually having to set up that infrastructure and such, you can have a webhook. And so I use webhooks a few times when I'm testing things that need a network connection. And it's a public website. Obviously, it's free to use. And that they do have paid tiers, I believe. So what's interesting here is this was limited to 100 callbacks. Now, this impacted 500 packages. That's not users. That is individual packages. There are millions of users. So they limited themselves to 100 callbacks that they received. That doesn't mean that all the people who were compromised, and people are still uploading as far as a couple of days ago, or 8 days ago, at least from what I'm seeing at GitHub. That doesn't mean that their information wasn't impacted, because it was. That just means that this person who used this public website only received 100 instances of the data. So that's interesting.
That is a good call out. I mean, what this specifically, um, yeah, they're only getting 100 callbacks, but something to keep in mind, something fun. I just want to point out, like, so this is what the usage of the webhook looks like, I believe, here. And so it's just a command, like a curl command, right? And so we see contents. Contents is what they're exfilling. So the data they're taking out of the system that they're executing on. This is the webhook. Probably should blur this out. Um,
It's done
it's okay.
now.
Yeah, it's done. Now I can blot it out, I think, post production. And they're echoing contents out, and then they're basically for, I think, W. I don't know what W means, but I imagine that they're encoding twice. So this is what you were talking about. Look what the W switch means. I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, check. It didn't show up on first search, so that's interesting. Uh,
But this is
it
kind of.
prevents,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, prevents line breaks.
Ah, so the funky thing with anything in the browser, like anything with web stuff, is like there's special characters that'll break, and you learn this when you start doing web app pen testing. Web application or web app shells are a pain to my existence, and I don't think it's most, I think it's every pen tester. You get a web shell, you're migrating access to a better shell. They're unstable, they're shitty because they can't handle certain types of text. They're really bad about handling special characters, which is why we have URL encoding, by the way. That's one of the whole reasons. Um, but yeah, so this is something cool, and you'll see that a lot of people use proof of concepts webhooks like this. AJ actually turned me on to this before I used one that's built into Burp Suite when I did web application testing. They have webhooks designed in there so you can check to make sure the attack is working. So there's this whole like style of attack that are blind attacks, meaning I do it, but I can't see the output of the attack directly. Like it's not as if you're sitting behind the console and I'm in a terminal shell and I'm writing, who am I? And it tells me who I am. This is, I'm running an attack on the server. I have no idea what the output is or what the outcome is going to be from this attack because it's blind. I'm doing it with my eyes closed. And so we may use stuff like this to get the output of that command out of the environment. So in this case, we could say, who am I? That can be contents, and then we pipe it out through our curl statement through the webhook, and then we can get the information. But this is a fun little cheat code that you learn how to do as an attacker. I like to do the old ICMP. I'll ping, and then I'll do TCP dump and see that the connection's coming back. But that's one of the tricks I do. Like, just an insight into my mind when I do attacks, I do it as simple as possible. Do a ping, and then I'm going to start progressing my attack. Okay, I can ping. I know it's communicating back. Now let me do something more complex, more complex, more complex. Boom, I have a real shell. There you go. It's just in the eyes and the mind of an attacker. Okay, I'll shut up. I've been talking way too long.
I just got IP blocked by GitHub.
Classic AJ.
I only ran like 5 searches, and it's like, you're blocked. So I switched profiles, and it's like, you're blocked. Rude.
Is there anything else that's fun in here that we should talk about? Here's a type of secrets. So secrets is just that broad category of anything that can be used to authenticate or say who you are and get access to stuff. So GitHub tokens, npm credentials, Atlassian keys, Datadog IP, API keys. I said IP keys.
Atlassian?
How do you say it?
Atlassian?
I don't. Mine sounds better.
The people who made Jira and Confluence.
Yeah.
In other words, yeah.
You say is that lazy? I can't say it.
It's two S's. Atlassian. Lass. Lass.
Put in the comments below how you say this. I don't know. Whatever.
Jesse went to work there. Shout out, Jesse.
Oh, hey, what's up, Jesse? Here's some remediation actions here. Do you want to get into remediation, or is there anything else you want to cover with this attack before we get into how to protect yourself?
Did you want to pull up one of the secrets so you can kind of see how it looks?
No, I don't want to pull up a secret.
Okay. Well, it's a ton of information. It's not like, oh, here's your token.
Okay, give
and
me a
that's
second. I'll
that's
pull
fine.
up an example secret. How about that? Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to put anyone's secret on the
I don't. What?
on
No, I mean
our
like
small listener base.
I would send you a fake one, but GitHub has blocked me.
This is AJ's life. He just gets blocked everywhere.
Hey, it actually made me good at rejection.
Yeah, isn't that like the actor way? You just have to get used to saying you're not good enough, or you're not skinny enough, you're not fat enough, you're not muscular enough, you're not tall enough, whatever.
Yeah, it's really fun when all you do for an audition is a personality slate. So you introduce yourself, you say where you live, and then you say something fun about you, and then you get rejected. So you know it's you at that point.
Okay. I must know more. So, what do you say when it's something interesting about you?
Oh, I talk about traveling.
Oh, okay. You don't say, "Hey, I'm a cybersecurity nerd."
No, that's not interesting at all.
I mean, I think it's interesting.
I think being to 15 countries is more interesting.
That's lame. That's like such a small number, though.
Okay. Do you know how many people haven't left their state or their
I'm pretty sure I've been to
territory
more than 15 countries.
for our Canadian presence? Yes, but you went to stands.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stands are a place I don't want to go. I'm sorry. They're beautiful. Afghanistan looks great.
Well,
When you were there, I would not have wanted to be there.
I didn't
I
want
went
to be
into
there
the Air
either.
Force for a reason.
So the Air Force is broadly known as the military's country club.
Yeah, and you get paid the same, so I don't understand your complaint.
I mean, I tried to go in the Air Force at one time. I think I said that on, I might have said that on a stream, but the Air Force didn't
Yeah,
want me. No, I said that on our last podcast.
yeah, we still don't mind you. I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
I mean, I almost, I got really high on my ASVAB. Like, they kept trying to get me to do intel, something besides infantry. They're like, "Are you sure?" I mean, if you wanting to go there, it makes you seem kind of stupid, but I'm like looking for a good example of a token that's not a full token, so I don't feel
Uh,
bad.
I mean, you can just do GHP underscore and then fake it.
Well,
So, for those of you who are not in the developer landscape, there are different types of tokens for GitHub specifically. So there's personal tokens, personal access tokens, PAT. There's GitHub something or other tokens, GHP or GHO. And so they have these different prefixes and then it's a string, right? And so if you have this token and for every other token, it works the same way, that essentially authenticates you as that user account. So, regardless of knowing the password or not, if you have this token and you can authenticate via a token, you can assume that uh, account, that access.
yeah, it's nothing fancy. This is all it looks like. Just a bunch of letters and numbers, really.
Yeah.
And then you just feed it to whatever you're trying to access, and it says, "Yep, I know who you are. Proceed." So it's as good as a password.
Yeah. So, some of the outputs, because I have one pulled up, it does have like some system information. Maybe there's some, this is the user profile path. So like C users, AJ, for example, would be a path. And from there, they can see, okay, so I have this token. This person seems like they develop X, right? Because the people that are going after are in some shape or fashion a developer, or they have cloned other people's repos, meaning they have taken other people's code and they have added it to their public profile on GitHub. And so you can kind of start to differentiate, okay, this person has access to this, and maybe I want to target this because I'm financially motivated. Or this person actually uses a .gov account, a .mil account. So I'm going to go after them because I'm a state-sponsored actor, and I want to see what other information I can gain.
Yeah, yeah, that was a good synopsis. So this is GitHub's response to this attack, actually, I found. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, I mean, developers have a lot of access to stuff, and some of the people to keep in mind. So I know a lot of outsourcing happens to Southeast Asia, Philippines, stuff like that. And basically, these Western companies are farming out the dev process because it's a lot cheaper. And like at Tandem, at one point, we had a web developer do our stuff. And then I found out they were farming it out to the Philippines and they were just handing off these credentials I gave them. And I just fired them. I was like, get out of here. No way. Because you don't know who's accessing it, and especially these, I don't know if they're considered MSPs, man. Surely, I guess they would be considered an MSP, people who do dev work for hundreds of companies. All these people have access, like say me, I'm a developer here. I've now access to hundreds of companies' software. Think of all the damage I could do at that point. It's insane. That's why these bigger companies who do work for tons of other companies, they're massive targets. People were targeting subcontractors to the government because of the access that they have. Maybe the government itself is a tough nut to crack, but what if we target these subcontractors who maybe aren't as secure and don't have as big of a budget? Same with not even just government space, but you got these big FANG companies or any Fortune, whatever. They're subcontractors that have access to these organizations. These nation state actors, these APTs, they're going to target these smaller companies, utilize their access to now get into these bigger ones. And it's just much easier for them to do. Path of least resistance.
Yeah. It also highlights the issue of just blindly trusting your service provider to have access, especially admin access to your environment. One of the things when I was on my team at the App Store was always who's watching us, right?
Mm.
Because we had, essentially God tier credentials. Who's watching our account to make sure that we're not compromised? Because sometimes, this as an attacker, sometimes you'll let someone land on the box, start to do incident response, and you'll dump their credentials.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it's so good.
Love it. I
Um,
mean, I had one client where I got into some system and the admin had logged into something with their browser and saved their credentials. Love it, man. Give them to me. Make my life easy.
yep.
I mean, and that's why the whole like ITOC insider threat is the whole thing, because who's watching all these admins, all these people within the company? Someone has to be watching what they do so that we can find these. And there was nation state or maybe not nation state actors, but there were definitely foreign actors that are applying to these large companies. Because I've been in some private conferences where people come and present these cases. We were in one a couple of years ago where this occurred. I won't say the company name, obviously, but they're going through that recruiting process. They're becoming devs. They're getting access to this code, and then they're exfiltrating all this code back to wherever they happen to be from China, Russia, whoever, doesn't matter. they're just taken aback to where they came from. But you just have to be really protective around these roles and try to figure out compensating measures to make sure, one, you're limiting the access they have, right? Just because they're a developer doesn't mean they should have access to everything. You should be doing granular controls. Man, I'm digging into what they shouldn't be doing, and we're not even there yet. I'll shut up. But we should be moving on to this. Let's look at the GitHub thing. I'm going like on a soapbox. You got me rolling, AJ. I hate you.
I'm good at having people talk.
You know what grinds my gears?
No, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead, and I want you to introduce us to this, but I'm curious what your take is on their response.
Okay, so let's look at their direct response here. Indirect response to this incident. Can you see this okay, or do I need to go
Yep.
bigger?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I can't. I need to do some of your acting, like vocal, like things. Like, what's something I could do to make sure I don't have tongue twisters, AJ?
Unique New York. Sally sells cheese shells down by the seashore. Peter Piper picked a pickle patch of peppers.
There you go. We're gonna do this before our presentation. We'll be out in the hallway practicing, looking like idiots.
I'll be doing a shot before our presentation.
Hey, that's good too. All right, don't drink and drive, people. Immediate removal of 500 compromised packages from the npm registry to prevent further propagation. So GitHub actually has been starting to step up. They're starting to do code scanning and stuff like that as well. Good stuff. I mean, it opens them up to liability. So, but whatever, not my problem. npm blocking the upload of new packages containing the malware's IOCs, cutting off the self-replicating pattern. Let's take a break. What does IOC means? Because this is your arena, man.
Yeah, so there's so as you may be able to see in the parentheses here, it says indicators of compromise, which is what an IOC is. So there's a difference between indicator of a compromise and an indicator of activity, or an IOA. And an IOA just means something happened, right? An indicator of compromise in this case is you have a repo that matches the name Shai-Hulud from this attack, which contains data.json, which is what we've observed in other people's repos who have been compromised, for example. So an indicator of attack may be, oh, this, person pushed to GitHub, whatever. It's very open. And then the indicator of compromise says you have this very specific name containing this very specific file, which is also base64 encoded. So this is an indication that you have been subject to this attack.
Okay, solid. This is from your man here.
But I want you to scroll back up. So my question is, immediate removal of 500 plus compromised packages from the registry. So maybe this is my ignorance here, but I did not know that GitHub could remove packages from npm.
So I don't know where the npm registry is, but if they have control over it, that's how I imagine. This is a good question. Let's see. GitHub, npm.
Yeah, I'm curious if like npm is on GitHub, you know?
GitHub offers a package registry that includes support for npm packages, allowing users to publish and manage their npm packages directly within their GitHub organization or personal account. This registry is part of GitHub Packages, integrates with your existing GitHub workflow, and offers features such as versioning, access control, and integration. So answer is yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Today I
What's your
learned.
next question? Yeah, same. I thought it was a third party.
Yeah, same. Yeah, what's your take on this? Do you think GitHub should have taken this action, and why?
Oof, hot take. You know, this is oof, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to answer this. No. Yeah, this is a hot take, right? This all comes down to where do we think companies should be limited in their ability? Like this is the whole thing with social media. People don't think there should be as much filter because they think it should be a public platform. Um, the problem that I remember reading about at one point is the more action you take, the more liability you're going to have when you don't take action. So a lot of people were hesitant to for a while, a lot of organizations, because when if they start taking action now and at one time something bad happens, or in the future when something bad happens, they're now culpable. Like they're at fault. They can be sued.
Really?
They're liable. Yeah. That was the big thing with social media. That's why a lot of people are trying to like, unless it's like against the law and like really, really bad, we're not going to touch it.
So I know that's kind of the case with like Good Samaritan laws, right? Where you may or may not be sued if you render, um, I was going to say financial aid. That's obviously not the case. If you render aid, like in the military, we call it self-aid and buddy care. Like if someone is injured, say someone has a heart attack, if you render CPR and you break their ribs, which is common in CPR if you're pushing hard enough,
You're
you can
supposed to
be
break their
sued.
ribs.
Yeah, so you can be sued, right?
Yeah.
And so some laws have Good Samaritan laws, some states have Good Samaritan laws, some states don't. And so this has presented an issue where certain individuals have stopped rendering aid for fear of being sued, being
Yep.
litigated.
Yep.
And so I think this is interesting with you mentioning that it makes them culpable because it could be used as a precedent, right? So say something else happens and GitHub chooses not to take this route. They choose not to cut it off. And maybe they do cut it off and it impacts business operations, right? Because these packages, you have 500 plus compromised packages. We'll say 500 for sake of round. And companies obviously use these, and there's very large financial institutions, very large security vendors, and other industry companies that use these packages. If they cause a business impact by preventing or stopping this attack and their ability, which was something that was brought up in WannaCry and stuff as well, but related to this, could they be sued for the business impact to those organizations? And obviously, we're not lawyers. If you're a lawyer, comment down below. Let us know.
We're getting so good at saying comment down below. We're like official, like now. Hey, it only took like 20 podcasts. No, we're not even at 20 yet.
We're at
But
12.
yeah, we got we got more to go. Yeah, it really is a very interesting thought exercise, I think, right? It's how much how much should we take? So like the big one back, like how much effort should we put into preventing, and where's the line we draw with the effort we put in? So like Pastebin used to be the site attackers used. No one cared. You put whatever you want up there, all kind of dumps. That's where you went to get password dumps, hash dumps,
Yeah.
Pastebin. And then they changed it. But you also have to think about the political kind of view. Like isn't GitHub owned by Microsoft?
Yes.
Yeah. So Microsoft's recently been under fire. What? For basically selling the fix to the cancer that they're developing, right? There was a whole big push by whoever in the political arena that said, hey, you're breaking the code, you're causing all this, and you're telling me I have to pay you more money to get something that actually works. That was the big push. So maybe this is them saying, hey, look, we're trying to fix stuff. We don't have to, but we're trying to show you good faith. And it could be a little bit of that, right? Just steps they're taking. Now, um, here's the question. Do you agree with them taking these down?
I do. And my logic behind that is they cut the bleeding.
Okay.
So the impact could have been far greater if they didn't. And then you open yourself to, well, you had the capability. Why didn't you?
Yeah.
And I think, and I think it comes down to the people or individual who is in charge, right? And this is like a life lesson, if you will. Do you want to regret not having stopped this attack? Or do you want to regret having stopped it and then you have to appear in Congress and say, oh, well, I stopped it so that hospitals didn't go down and people lost their lives, or, you know, banks weren't compromised and the economy tanked and everyone lost their livelihoods. Like, those are obviously dramatizations, but who's to say that that couldn't be possible had this carried on? Because at
Yeah.
the time, you have to remember, this is after the fact. We are seeing what has been identified by individuals. So maybe they didn't know, probably didn't know, that it was exfilling to webhook.site on a free tier plan. Because if you had a paid tier plan, you would be able to get way more submissions into your webhook and therefore be able to compromise way more individuals. So personally, I'm a fan. I would like to think that I would have made the same decision were I in this place, but I'm glad that I haven't been in this place where I have to decide whether or not to open myself slash my company to litigation for the purpose of stopping an attack.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I personally, I think they'll be pulled in front of Congress no matter what action they take. But on the end, like if you look at it politically, they're like, here's some good faith. Maybe the next time we want to buy a big company, do an acquisition, maybe you'll kind of let it slide instead of holding it up or forcing a breakup. But no, I agree with you. I think I enjoy seeing actions like this, like such as some of the domain takedowns that we've seen historically, where these sites are really bad. They're using them as C2 or whatever, like darknet marketplaces. They're taking them down. They're seizing them. Because they have the ability, and it's not just that they have the ability, right? The government can do that, but large companies like this, they have the visibility, especially to all these repositories that other companies don't have. So they're positioned well to make a positive impact on the community, on not just a community, but the economy as well, because that is ultimately what's being impacted when we have infections, malware outbreaks. It's going to affect the bottom line. So for you, Mr. Mrs. Executive, when you have an incident, which this would be if this was one of your packages, um, you want someone to potentially stop it before it gets too bad. Before you have to call your insurance company, before you have to start notifying customers, spending the millions doing that. So it's good. The question still remains on the fuzzy line. Where is the line?
Yeah. I think too it's interesting to think about if you were impacted by this, right? Like, would you have wanted them to stop it? Obviously the answer is yes.
Mm.
Now on the flip side,
Okay.
if they caused loss of revenue to your company, would you sue them?
Ooh. Well, what kind of loss of revenue are they causing? Like if they didn't, so if they have a history of preventing this type of attack or taking action and then they don't, is that when you're talking about suing them?
Yeah, we can go with that because I'm not too sure. Like, I know one of these packages is like tiny color, for example, right? So that
Mm.
that might not be um as impactful or like as
Oh, tiny colors used a lot though, I'm pretty sure.
it is, but I don't know that it would. Well, I guess it wouldn't matter, right? Because if it's loaded by your application or whatever, then you would have that access. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I take that back. But it's it's interesting to think about kind of the um ethos of this. Like, do you stop it because you can, or do you not for fear of, you know, being sued or whatever might come against you? And then also in the courts, this sets a precedence, right? So
Yeah.
if you have this ability, which um let's just say companies or corporations that have access to lots of other companies or corporations or individuals may have data that can be used to correlate attacks or prevent attacks, and they don't always share those. We'll say that very generalized statement. Um, if if those were to be proven, because this is my opinion, quote unquote,
Sounds like a
would
spy movie, bro.
I mean, we all know what we're talking about. Would it would that open those corporations to litigation?
Well, that's the whole due diligence, due care thing, right? Um, I'm not a lawyer, obviously. I didn't go to law school.
Same. I didn't go to any
And
school. No, I'm just kidding.
facts. Clown school. No, I'm kidding. He has 2 associate's degrees. He went to some kind of Air Force yacht club thing. I don't know, to do some cyber training. He's very educated. No, I mean, it really comes down to the due care, due diligence piece, and you'll see that a lot of times actually in compliance, in any type of audit, did you actually do enough given your circumstances to prevent this particular issue? That's what it comes down to. So if you have a vendor that's compromised, did you have them do an attestation? Did you do a background check? Hey, are they well recognized? Are they meeting any other type of compliance requirements? Um, are you just doing the best thing that you can given the cards in your hand, to prevent bad stuff from occurring, right? It's kind of like you get in a car wreck, right? Let's go to car insurance. You get in a car wreck, they're going to say, "Did you wear a seatbelt? Did you do due care to not get hurt? Were you're in the hospital for laid up for months. Did you wear a seatbelt? If you didn't, we're not paying the bill." That's what they're looking for.
By the way, you should always wear a seatbelt. That's just common
Yeah.
sense.
But that's the kind of stuff, right? Did you do this thing? Okay, we're not paying the bill. And it's kind of like a lot of what we're seeing with insurance companies now. Have you gotten a pen test?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you haven't validated all these answers. Like here's some wow, we're segueing, but that's okay. Quick segue here. What used to occur with insurance, you would say, "Hey, so and so, I want cyber liability insurance for my company." They say, "Okay, here's a big checklist of stuff. I want you to fill it out and tell me all these things that you've done to protect your organization." You say, "Here you go." You fill it out, you hand it back to them. Now you get a cyber attack. You say, "Okay, insurance company, I need $1 million because we have legal costs, incident response costs, whatever." And they're going to say, "Okay, show me evidence now that you've had an incident that you did this stuff." And you go like, uh, I don't know. And that's the problem, right? They're saying, "Hey, did you take due care? Did you do your due diligence? All this stuff." And now they're saying, "Okay, get a pen test, get some way of validating that these controls you're putting in place were actually put in place, not you just saying stuff." So that's where I'm going with that. So there's a lot of that theme in the cybersecurity space and just in business in general. Are you doing your best to prevent problems versus are you just saying YOLO, like AJ, and just letting it happen? You're
Wow.
welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah. Let's pivot a little bit and let's talk about some protections or mitigations that could be put in place for this attack.
Okay. Shoot it. Oof.
So, one thing would be using a process to basically test and validate updates before you push them out, right? So traditionally, you never just push an update everywhere. Some organizations may do that and cause billions of dollars in loss of revenue in one day because you break stuff, but we're not them. We follow good practices. And another thing would be scanning the code, right? So there's tools.
Well, hang
This
on,
is
hang on, hang on, hang on. Back up. How does this prevent the npm disaster? Or is this for another issue?
because your developers get compromised because a package is there, right? So if the package is not there because you've scanned the update before you have pushed it to
So
your
you're
different
talking about scanning
applications,
all the packages as well that you're
yes,
integrating? Okay.
yes,
Okay. There you go. That's what I wanted you to clarify.
yeah. So, and there are tools, this is not sponsored, but the only one that I know of is like Sneak. I'm sure you know of more, where you can like scan the package and see if there's malicious code embedded in it, right?
Yeah. I forget. I don't know what the general term is, but yeah, what he's talking about was great. Just scanning your code for general vulnerabilities. It also checks. You were about to say what was number two?
I don't know. You cut me off.
Package up and then like out of date packages and stuff like that. That's actually something we do when we do web application pen testing. Like usually a website isn't just a website. You have all these additional modules, all these packages, all the stuff, and we'll scan and say, hey, you're like 3 major versions behind. There's a critical vulnerability with this. You should probably update it. But that's the type of stuff AJ is talking about.
Yeah. Um, and so another thing would be, so you don't just push updates, right? You have some type of patch management process, and it is a little bit different because this isn't like an OS patch, and I understand that. But you're still pushing code. That code is still used by your applications or your products, and so you should still be scanning it. Let's be honest. And one thing to call out too is that this was identified. This is open source software that was compromised. This is also identified because it was open source. People scanned the code and they were able to start tracing the back door to the specific packages that have been compromised. So I think that is kind of I would say that's more of a kudos than it is a negative against open source software because
Mm,
it wasn't like this had gone on for months, right? At least currently, as of recording, this wasn't something that had been occurring for months. Whereas, if we look at big breaches like SolarWinds, for example, they were what? They were in everyone's network for like 6 months to a year.
yeah, I think it started like that in November and went all the way through March or April.
Yeah. So, and that's not like because it was closed source. It's just when it's open source, when the code is available, it's easier to be scanned. And so you basically increase your one, you increase your attack surface, but two, you increase the people who are reviewing your code from just you and your organization to every individual that has access to your code. And so you can have wins like this.
You know what I want? I want us to have someone that does a bunch of open source development, like a true. Ooh, I should get my best friend on. Actually, he's a dev. He's been doing
Excuse
dev
me,
for.
your best friend is your co-host. No, I'm just
Oh, fair. My original best friend, Kevy. What up? We're gonna have you on, man. No, I'd be curious what their perspective is. So there's yes and no to yours
yeah,
for me. We can
fair.
be on different sides of the fence here. That's okay. So yeah, that's traditionally the standpoint of a lot of people with open source. A lot more eyes on the problem. That's true. However, if I were a company and I'm integrating open source into my workflow, I would be actively scanning for issues. Now, the problem that you have when you have open source is that you're losing control over the product, right? If your team is managing the code, you can say, hey, Bob, fix this crap. There's
Yes.
an issue, there's a vulnerability, fix it. With open source, it's like, uh, I know you're overworked. You probably already worked 60, 70 hours this week. Hey, you want to get to these 20 critical findings and fix the code? It's not something that's going to be remediated quickly, but that's something you have to consider when you're integrating open source stuff. Now, a lot of companies do have programs where if they're heavily relying on an open source software, they're also part of that team that are pushing updates as well. They're saying, okay, we're going to help take some ownership here. We're relying on it. And we're going to say, okay, we identify this flaw because we're scanning it or reviewing the code. and we're going to push these updates so that other people benefit from it, but also we stay secure as well, our product. So that's something to keep in mind. And some big companies do that because there are some really, really good open source software out there that companies rely on. So that's my standpoint. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's always a trade-off, right? You're trading development and the costs associated with development with usability. And as
Yeah.
long as you're okay with that, and like you still mentioned scanning that code. And I think that's the important piece here. Um, I'm actually trying to see if I can find who contributors are to these packages.
You just look at the commits.
Yeah, that's probably going to take a while.
Yeah,
I
that's
wanted to
probably
see
a
if it
lot.
was like, oh, Microsoft is a contributor to Tiny Color, or this company is, so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's tough. Another thing to consider too, if you're like you're a cybersecurity executive and you're over a say a startup, right? You're probably not going to be adding security fixes to other packages. You're more concerned about functionality. You're like, all right, I'd like to have this functionality or it's not working the way we need it to work. And so you're like, all right, we're focused on capability versus security, which is always what people consider first because one drives money, drives revenue, the other does not. And that's kind of the classic. This is cybersecurity. We're like, you're not a value add, bud. You're costing us money. But, I think nowadays we're seeing that cybercrime's, a massive industry. And yeah, we're costing money, but it is hard to also predict how much money we're saving organizations, but there is money savings there.
Yeah. So I was right with my assumption. Tiny Color is actually owned by a person who works at Mozilla, and the second contributor I clicked on works at Microsoft. So
There you go.
two very large organizations. And one thing too to be aware of, if you are contributing to these packages, more than likely, as Mike mentioned, you are also users of this package, or else you wouldn't spend your time contributing to it.
And this was one of the ones that were compromised?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something to keep in mind too. You have these big companies contributing to this thing, and it was compromised still.
Yeah, and I mean that just goes to show, right? Like phishing is not just something that you can kind of write off and be like, oh, I'm good. We do phishing tests at our organization, and our click rate is this, right? Like it's one of those areas that'll probably be successful forever.
Yeah. I mean, it's just tough. Open source is tough. It's being done outside of the confines of a normal corporation if you have a mature security program. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean,
Yeah,
it's not a lockdown. Access to the dev system, they probably don't have all these endpoint protections that you're normally going to have. What are you going to do? It's a risk. It's just something for you to. We're not saying don't use open source software. What we're saying is just be more cautious and understand the risks that you're accepting. Because if something does happen, you're going to have to explain them. Why did you take this risk? What did you do to protect yourself from this risk? I think that's all we're saying. Well, that's what I'm saying. What are you saying, AJ?
yeah. No, it's the same. And another thing to call out too is, you know, we've just discussed the code itself, right? But another thing is you don't need everyone to have um, access through your proxy. Hopefully, you have a proxy to certain websites. So, in this case, assuming you were one of the first 100, webhook.site, it's pretty innocuous. It's probably open. Public github.com. Maybe instead of github.com, you have an enterprise version, and then you restrict who's able to write or read public github.com. And so if that were the case and you were compromised, you would have made a public repo, but it wouldn't have been published because it would have been blocked at your proxy. So there's a few different things that you can implement here, and the first fix is of course, oh, don't use open source software, which is not going to be the case for most individuals and most organizations. It's more about how can we be secure while maintaining the availability of using these open source platforms.
Yeah. I think that's a big topic there that you mentioned, availability, and also, oops, geez, I keep kicking this stupid thing. Let me move it back. Um, yeah, I mean, a huge thing with it is that the bottom's like moving, but not error. Um, I don't even know where I was going with availability. Yeah, I don't know. I give up.
Cool.
I had something like really good, it's like, yes, no, not happening.
Well, anyways, what other protections could be put in place?
Yeah, I think a big one is scanning your repos for API keys, limiting the access your devs have. We've already talked about scanning. I think it's huge. Building out a proper DevOps pipeline is going to be huge, to make sure things aren't getting committed to your code bases. So if someone else is using yours, like there's a bunch of examples out there where people just build a thing that other people use and they're selling access to it. You want to protect yours and all your clients. Um, I I may be, you know, I guess I was trying to think of what the word is, but um, have a good security counsel. So if you're not technical, right, which a lot of people in the executive position aren't super technical, have that person you can rely on and say, hey, we're we do dev. We're a dev shop. This is a thing going on. Are we protected? What types of things do we have in place to protect against this and be informed, right? Because you're going to have to answer to someone higher, but use your people. And if they don't know, there's probably vendors out there that could help with that. These are conversations that we like to have when I'm consulting with Tandem. How can we prevent this from becoming an issue? What do you think, Mike? How would you abuse this as a bad guy? This is where tabletop exercises, things like that come in handy where you're having someone think like the bad guy. How could it potentially be abused? And then you're premeditatively adding solutions, adding fixes ahead of time so that when things do happen, because I promise you, it's only a matter of time. If you haven't had an incident yet, it is going to happen in your lifetime if you are in this industry. It's going to happen. I don't care who you are. And the question isn't if it's going to happen, it's going to be when and how bad. So the more kind of checks you can put in place, the more kind of stops you can put in place to limit the damage, the better you're going to be, the quicker you're going to recover, and ultimately, the lower impact on revenue that you're going to have as a business.
Yeah. And I think that's a good call out, right? Like you had mentioned scanning repos for these secrets, for these tokens, and that's exactly what Truffle Hog does. And
Mhm.
in this case, it's just being used maliciously. They're abusing the ability of this tool. And so you have, preventative controls. Okay, we're going to scan our code. We're going to restrict Pastebin, GitHub, etc., you name it, from everyone's access. And we're going to lock it down to like specific individuals that have a business use case for this access. And then as a kind of compensating control, you also are scanning your repos. So if this attack were to occur in your environment, you identify it and then you're able to remove it, and hopefully before the attacker has been able to leverage those credentials, or you rotate the credentials as well. Hopefully do both, don't just do one. And so there the impact to your organization is limited, right? Maybe it's nothing aside from the fact that initially you had been compromised, but maybe there's no user impact, no loss of data, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in this case, there are some preventative measures. Sometimes there aren't, like stuff like the
Yeah.
SolarWinds business. What are you going to do? I mean, there's literally nothing you could have done with that. There are things you could put in place to limit the damage if there was a compromise afterward. But in terms of it getting in your environment, it's a trusted organization. their supply chain was hit, what are you going to do? This is you putting stuff in place to limit the damage around that infected system. So splash radius, I think, is the fun word there. Cool. Okay. So I think that's all I have on this topic. You got anything else you want to wrap it up for us?
Yeah. So in wrapping it up, because I forgot the other word I was gonna say, we discussed the recent APM breach, which involved 500 packages being backdoored with the Shai-Hulud worm, named after the big ugly thing from Dune. And essentially, what it does is it exfiltrates your secrets, tokens, whatever it can find, uploads it to a public repo, and we discussed the supply chain effects. So, how you can scan open source solutions that you implement within your products, in your environment, to identify these attacks before they actually take effect in your environment, as well as some compensating controls such as, proxies, and then limiting the users that have access to these public websites that may be abused for this type of activity, whether it's pastebin, whether it's GitHub. We've seen attacks where they leverage social media such as YouTube comments for C2 and stuff like that. It's getting to the point where basically just turn it off if you want to be secure, which we all know is not a real answer to that. And then we discussed some more compensating controls, such as reviewing your commits to your repos, right? Making sure that if you are contributing code, whether it's public or whether it's private, you're identifying these secrets, these tokens ahead of time, so that even if someone were to gain access to your environment and you have a private repo or an enterprise solution of GitHub, they're not able to find tokens and then abuse those within your organization and within your products. And I think that covers it all. Mike, was there anything that I missed?
No, I promise you weren't putting me to sleep. I promise. I promise. We've had a long
Cool.
day. Both of us work full-time jobs, so plus more than full-time jobs, actually. And we do this on the side. So it's late for us, so excuse us for me. I think I'm the only one yawning today, but that's okay. Yeah, I think that was it. I think it was a good briefing. I think this was a good podcast. If you have any questions, happy to answer them in the chat. We also have a Discord. It will be in the links. I do a stream every Thursday. Hadn't mentioned that yet, but if you want to hop on there and ask questions, happy to answer them for you. It's typically geared towards people getting in cyber, but it's kind of free reign. I'm on there for 3 hours, so hop in there, hang out with me, ask questions. Happy to demonstrate some of the attacks as well. I find it as a place just to knowledge share. And everyone in there can learn something. It'll be posted on YouTube anyways later. But so really good stuff. Thanks for putting this topic together. I think it's a really important one, a really good one. So with that, I'm Mike. This is AJ. And we are C-Suite Cyber doing some good stuff. And we will see you on the next episode.